Ready, guys? Thanks. Okay, a couple of quick announcements for you. If you can imagine, gosh, it was only a few hours ago we got started. And how do you feel? Yeah? You might be feeling a little tired. It's with the high intensity and the engagement, so it's probably a good thing. And so what we're going to ask you to do is keep going with us for at least another hour, if not two. Now we have some great things happening. First, Rich is going to speak, and then we're going to have our raffle. That's going to be immediately after Rich speaks. And then after all that, we'll do a quick wrap-up. And then you'll have a chance to network. So we'll spend an hour out in the rotunda. Drinks are on us, so hopefully you'll enjoy that. And get some more time to network. So if you haven't met enough people, this will definitely give you that time. All right? So, everyone's, when you work in all sorts of different companies, gosh, Rich reminded me just before the talk of someone who's near and dear to us, Mita Vyas, and she's an Agile coach. She's with PayPal, and that's actually how I got to meet Rich. And through that relationship, and this is during the time when we were kind of figuring out what to do with AgileCamp, Mita came to us and she said, my ex-boss would be a really great speaker. And so that was 5 years ago. Fast forward, now he's here again to really help us launch AgileCamp Nike. And he's been a great partner of ours, and he's been a great mentor. You talk about people who've changed the world. That's Rich. He's definitely done his fair share of changing the world. And my hope is that out of the things that you learned today, that you'll pull a fair share out of what Rich has to present. So with that, Rich Sheridan.
Thank you, sir. All right, one complaint about this facility. I've been reminded all day long that I really need to work on my golf game. And one customer service complaint to the folks at Nike: who are the GPS sports watch experts in the room? Because mine is currently full and I can't run another run that it records. So if you can help me out here a little bit, I need to unload my talks. So when you release a business book to the world that has the words joy and love on the cover, it's kind of vulnerable. Wasn't sure how it would be received. Given my life has turned into speaking and traveling, it seems like it's been received pretty well. I'm going to give you just a little 90-second peek into the world of Menlo. It is in the form of a book trailer. I like the video just because it's short and shows you a lot of Menlo. Yes, it is a book trailer, but that isn't my purpose in showing you. I figure I'm going to talk about some odd stuff in my talk with you, and if you don't have this mental image of what I'm talking about, it'll be a little more difficult to comprehend, perhaps. So here's a little video. Most organizations don't really spend much time thinking about their culture. Most organizations operate in chaos. Everyone wants to work on something that's bigger than themselves. I did. I started out in an industry that I was very excited about. Very quickly, I hit a trough of disillusionment. And by 1997, when I was promoted to vice president of product development, I wanted out. I wanted to get as far away from this industry as I could. And then in that moment, I decided to change the industry. And that's the story that I've captured in this book. People are coming from all over the planet to come visit this space that's in the basement of a parking structure in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. And they're coming for a reason. They're coming to see something. What most people are looking for is some lessons around what it takes to build an intentionally joyful culture. Imagine half of my team had joy and the other half didn't. Which half would you want working on your project? We had so many requests for these tours, we realized it was time to share this story with the world in a different way. And that's how the book came to be. space is flexible. We work 2 to a computer, we assign these pairs, we switch them every 5 working days. The human energy that results from this kind of organization, you can actually feel the joy when you're in the room. My name is Richard Sheridan, and I'm the author of Joy, Inc.
All right. And you can actually pick up your copy today if you go out and see Carissa out in the outer area here. So I want to tell you just a little bit of story about me, because a lot of people wonder where some of the crazy ideas come from that we use at Menlo, but most of us who are older in the Agile industry weren't always Agile. And so I just want to give you a little peek into my personal history to know where a lot of this comes from. So I won't belabor you with a lot of details, but back in 1971, I was a kid in high school, freshman year of high school, and my high school was offering computer programming for the first time ever. And I typed in a 2-line program. Yes, kids, there were in fact computers back in those days. They operated a little differently than they do today. And I typed in a program, I typed the word run, and it came on a roll of paper, and it clacked out "Hi, Rich," because that's what I told it to do, and quite frankly, I was hooked. 13 years old, I knew what I was going to do the rest of my days. By 1973, I'd won an international programming contest for what would now be termed fantasy baseball. I was a dyed-in-the-wool Detroit Tigers fan. I just wanted to play baseball in the winter months with my friends, so I typed the entire baseball register into the computer and allowed my friends and I to pick our lineups and play baseball against one another. My life is probably littered with these kind of lost opportunities. Eventually, I actually got my first job after that program win, writing code professionally. Somebody from the intermediate school district that had supplied the compute power came to me and said, "Would you like to work for me?" And I said, "Doing what?" And he says, "Well, writing software, of course." And I said, "You get paid for this?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "How much?" And he says, "We'll pay you $3 an hour," which was $1 more an hour than I was making as a dishwasher at Big Boy at the time. Awesome. So I had my first job as a programmer before I could even drive. I stayed there for a few years, eventually went to the University of Michigan. Go Blue. It's a big Nike partner now. Eventually got a computer science, computer engineering master's degree from Michigan. Graduated in 1982, which quite frankly was a pretty heady time in our industry. The PC was just coming out. I was in an industry I loved. I was well equipped, and quite frankly, I thought I had the world by the tail. And the career that followed, by world standards, looked perfect. In fact, I had this beautiful upward trajectory. My wife was very happy with me. I was taking good care of my family. I went from programmer in 1982 to VP of R&D by 1997, and every measure the world would say about success I had. There was only one significant problem. There was a different line going on at exactly the same time, and it was my love for my profession. By my mid-30s, I wanted out. I was living the life of chaos. I would come home after long days away from family, often all-nighters. My wife would look at me and say, "Honey, you look really tired." And so this was not what I was hoping for. So I was literally looking at getting out of the profession, as I said in the video, and the escape route was going to be a canoe camp in the boundary waters of Minnesota. There's usually at least one guy who will come to me afterwards, maybe you, huh? It was like, "Can we talk more about the canoe camp idea? Did you have a plan? What was it?" That sort of thing. So that's where I was headed. So what was going on? I had this wonderful worldly success, but what was going on? Well, if you lived in the software world long enough, you know that we live in a land of chaos. Often it is a land of firefighting. We often come to work in firefighting where we could, right? Oxygen tanks in our backs, visors, running from one fire to another. And you are often, when I would come home and my wife said, "You look really tired, honey," she'd say, "Did you get a lot done today?" And I'm like, no, I got nothing done today. I went to a lot of meetings, I answered a lot of phone calls, I handled a lot of emergencies, but I got absolutely nothing done. And when you live in a life of chaos, eventually things go bump in the night. You suffer negative events. The one I write about in the book is not one of my negative events, but it's the kind that pervades our industry. Knight Capital Group tire programmer makes a simple server software error, and in 45 minutes, their New York Stock Exchange trading platform trades $7 billion worth of securities it wasn't supposed to, costing Knight Capital Group $400 million in 45 minutes. Are you with me that that would be considered a negative event inside of your organizations? Well, when negative events occur, there is usually an organizational response. It comes in the form of a 3-ring binder containing a procedure manual with a lot of non-value add templated documents, often branded by acronyms like the software development lifecycle. And we must put a police force in charge of this, just to make sure all the sign-offs occur, the meetings are being scheduled, that sort of thing. So you go from chaos to full-blown bureaucracy. You go from the land of never getting anything done to the land of never getting anything started. And of course, things still have to happen, so shadow IT groups form that learn to work around the system. And now you're operating in the worst version of this. You're operating in chaos and bureaucracy simultaneously. This was my life. This is where my heart was breaking for the profession I thought was going to carry me forward. But by my mid-30s, as I looked ahead, I said, I can't do this another 30 years. Now, usually in these organizations like mine, you know, went through all of this, there comes that wake-up moment where you say, oh, wait a minute. I think we went a little too far with the bureaucracy. Let's back it off a little bit. Let's write a light version of our processes and procedures. Let's just have a little stapled together document for small projects. But of course, even those meetings don't get scheduled. We cancel the SDLC, we fire the PMO, and we declare we're now agile. And usually what that means is back to chaos. And back and forth my life was going. So that's what was happening here. Now, there's this side of me that is the eternal optimist. My co-founder, James, calls me the infernal optimist. But if you stick me in a room full of manure, I will keep digging till I find the pony. And so I knew I was trapped. Quite frankly, I was scared. I didn't know what I was going to do to support my family going forward if I couldn't do the thing that I loved to do, that was my chosen profession, that I was equipped to do. So I started digging my way out. And the way out led me to authors and books, but not books on technology, books on organizational design, books like Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, on the art and practice of building a learning organization, systems thinking, Tom Peters' book, In Search of Excellence, John Naisbitt's book, Megatrends. All these books were pointing me to a better way of doing things than was customary. They didn't necessarily tell me how to get there, but they did say there was a city on a shining hill. If you can get there, you will enjoy it. And so in 1999, I had what Franz Johansson in his book would call a click moment. I read a book by a guy named Kent Beck on something called extreme programming, and I saw a video on Nightline called The Deep Dive that was about IDEO, the design firm down in Palo Alto. And that was transformative for me. I was now the VP at this public company. The team sort of had to kind of listen to me. And over the next 2 years, I transformed that organization into something that looks a lot like what you saw in the video. It took about 6 months to really get it working, and for a year and a half, I got to run that team. And the joy was back for me. And in 2001, how many of you remember 2001 in the IT industry? A few of you old timers, yeah. You kids, you don't know. Okay. That's when it all blew to smithereens. The California company that had purchased us shuttered every remote office they had, including my Ann Arbor office. And I went home that night and I told my wife that I'd lost my job. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes and she said, "You're unemployed now?" And I said, "No, honey, I'm an entrepreneur now." Remember, eternal optimist. It took her 6 months to figure out that entrepreneurship actually pays less than unemployment. By then we were profitable, and a few years ago she said, "I knew this would work out." So, what did I discover in those 2 years? What I discovered was this wasn't about finding the perfect tuning fork for this picture. It was about throwing away the picture entirely and replacing it with something very different. It was about systems thinking and structures, simple, repeatable, measurable, visible structures based on human relationships that feed human energy. Don't lose sight of that in your pursuit of any kind of transformational change. What you want to do is get to systems, get to simple systems, and get to systems that feed the energy of your team. And if you're not getting there, keep working at it. You will eventually. And now I talk about it in the context of joy, which is a weird word. It's a weird word for business, at least. A lot of people would probe me and say, "Rich, where does the joy come from for you personally?" And quite frankly, I thought back to that 13-year-old. I thought that's where the joy comes from for me. That 13-year-old kid that got caught in this idea that software was going to be a really cool thing to do, that it was this wonderful, inventive expression of humanity. But I realized that wasn't it for me. I had to dig back a little further. I had to go back to an earlier story in my life, a story that involved my parents. They had bought, when I was about 10, the equivalent of an IKEA bookshelf. My mom was very excited about this. It was going to fill the one wall of the living room. It was going to be 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall. And we didn't get a lot of furniture in those days. And it was out in the garage in a box. And they went out to dinner and a movie that night. And I was on my own. And I said, "I'm going to build that shelving unit." So I went out in the garage over the next couple hours. I pulled out 50 pieces of wood and 200 little nuts, bolts, and screws and like a 38-page user manual. And I put that thing together. And I was so, oh crap, I built it in the garage and Mom wanted it in the living room. So for the next hour, I inched that thing out of the garage, down the sidewalk, through the kitchen, pushed it right into the living room where Mom wanted it. My 10-year-old memory says I didn't harm it a bit. I set up my dad's books, my mom's knickknacks. The stereo was playing. When they walked in the door, I had my mom's favorite album playing. And she cried. And right there, I realized joy. This is the heart of the engineer, and we can't lose sight of it. Serving others. Serving others with the work of our hearts, our hands, and our minds. This is where joy comes from for a technical team. What we want to do is see our work get out into the world and delight the people it's intended to serve. We want to have those joy moments where somebody sees what we did and maybe move to tears because they're so delighted with what it was that we created. But at the very least, they grab you and say, "Really? You got to work on that? That's so cool." And unfortunately for me, in the majority of my career before this transformational change, I wasn't feeling that kind of joy. I was delivering substandard work to the world. There was firefighting everywhere. I was being reminded every day that we never had a chance to work with the kind of pride that Deming would talk about. So that's where joy comes from for me. And what I want to explore with you the rest of my talk is, does joy matter? Can you feel it? Can you touch it? Can you see it? And does it in fact produce business results? And I can tell you a lot of people are coming to see. They come to visit. They come in these tours. We do 1 to 3 tours a day. They come by the thousands. We keep this tour count by our front door. This was the tour count back at the end of 2016. And when they walk in the front door, they are literally confronted with the culture of Menlo. They see this big open space, this big room with no walls, offices, cubes, or doors. And I can tell you that people wonder about this. They say, Rich, there are books and articles that come out that say these open and collaborative environments don't work. There's psychologists with data that proves it doesn't work. And I say, yep, I know, because anytime those articles come out, people send them to me. There is actually, if you want to defeat a move to an open office environment, in your workplace, just send me a note. I can arm you to the gills with all the data that proves it. But don't come visit Menlo then, because you'll be confounded. So people ask us, why does it work at Menlo and it doesn't work anywhere else? I say it's very simple. We didn't build an open and collaborative workspace. We built an open and collaborative culture. Our workspace is a reflection of our cultural values of openness, transparency, flexibility, scalability. It's noisy. This is weird, right? Everybody's, oh, software development has to be done in library quiet. We have very few rules at Menlo. But one of the simple ones is you cannot wear earbuds while you're working. We want you to overhear the conversations of others. It is, in fact, a noisy environment, but the difference is it is the noise of work. You can actually see teamwork. It's not an org chart. People working side by side, shoulder to shoulder. The space itself, very flexible. Pull downs from the ceiling, lightweight aluminum tables, and a team that is in charge of how the space is organized. There is no rules, there is no permission to ask, there are no space police or space czars. The team can change the space and does almost every single day in small ways to adjust to the needs of the project. But for all of our years, the team has chosen to push the tables front to front and side to side. They actually want to be this close to one another. And then we built that learning organization that Peter Senge talks about. And books, yep, books are a big part of Menlo, but that's not really where the learning is built in. We built learning into the system of the way we work. We connected our team intellectually, we connected them emotionally, we connected them physically. Two people working side by side at one computer, sharing a keyboard and a mouse every minute of every day. As the video said, the pairs are assigned and we switch them every 5 working days. That component alone produces a dramatic change in human energy, in learning, and in quality. And then we knew we had to change the conversations. We had to change how we communicated. You know, we often jokingly refer to programmer speak as dolphin speak. You ever heard dolphins? You're like, it sounds intelligent. They seem to understand each other. I wonder what they're saying. So we had to figure out, how do we change the conversations between technical teams and business teams, between technical teams and what I call the lost tribe of technology, and technical teams within itself. Now, I love this quote from John Naisbitt in his book, Megatrends, that the most exciting breakthroughs that are going to occur in the century we're in right now are not going to occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human. What's fascinating to me is he wrote this in 1982. I thought that was pretty prescient on his part. So, in our space, when we communicate internally, because we are all in one room together, we're hyper co-located, we're all in one big open room together, we don't use electronics to communicate with one another. We use what we like to call high-speed voice technology. It's awesome. The hardware was pre-installed at birth. Vocal cords, tympanic membranes, auditory nerve stimulation of the brain, body language, eyebrows, tonal inflection. In fact, if we want to call an all-company meeting at Menlo, you'll practice it with me here. This is a little bit bigger than Menlo, but I'm going to say, hey, Menlo. You're going to say, hey, Rich. Hey, Menlo! Hey, Rich! And the whole place goes quiet. And we are now in an all-company meeting. No book the conference room, no CC all emails, no checking and coordinating of calendars. Hey Menlo, hey Rich, conduct the business of the meeting, thank them, move on. 7 to 10 seconds. Done. All company meeting complete. We hate meetings. We think they're mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management. So the ones we do have, we keep short. Now, we do have one meeting a day that's called by a dartboard. There's a little bit of whimsical irreverence at Menlo. We have a dartboard that has an alarm clock. If someone could explain to me why dartboards need alarm clocks, that's beyond me. But it was programmable. We've got some programmers on the team, so we programmed it. And at 10 o'clock every morning, bong, 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 bong. And the team gathers like Stepford children in a circle. For our daily stand-up meeting, you can see this one probably has 60, 70 people in it. There's a lot of people, oh, you could never do a stand-up with that large a group. We do it every day. And we pass around the iconic symbol of Menlo. So you'll see if you look around that circle, there's a plastic two-horned Viking helmet. That's why it's on the cover of the book. That controls the meeting. Because we work in pairs, we report out in pairs, and having a two-handled talking stick is actually very convenient. So we also change how we communicate with our customers. Software is such a theoretical activity that until you can actually see, feel, and touch the software, you don't know what the progress of the team actually is. So once a week in our cycle, we have a show and tell with our customers. If they're close, nearby to Ann Arbor, they will come in. If not, we'll do it electronically. But we walk through. What have we accomplished? The customer actually, though, shows us what we did. We don't show it to the client. The customer, in this case, the gentleman in the blue shirt, sitting front and center, hand on keyboard and mouse. Our team is walking them through all the features that we did, and every time there's a new feature, he's touching it. He's showing us the work that we did the previous 5 days. What we don't want to do is have meetings where people disengage. So by putting the customer front and center, you can't disengage. Now, I want to test you a little bit here in terms of meetings. How many of you have meetings where you work? Anybody meetings where you work? Anybody? Okay. So when you go home tomorrow, get back to work, I want you to watch in your next meeting. Well, how many of you will have a meeting tomorrow, for example? Okay, all of you. Watch for the moment of disengagement in the meeting. Okay, and here's what it looks like. You're in the meeting. You're just all sitting around a big table. Somebody's talking up at the front. Somebody's drawing on a whiteboard. And you'll see someone do this. You know what I'm talking about, right? Oh, you do that? Oh, okay. And then you're working away, and then somebody says, hey, Rich, I think you know something about this, don't you? Oh, I'm sorry, were you talking to me? Where were we? I'm sorry, I was getting ready for my next meeting. What were we talking about? Have you ever seen that behavior in a meeting? Have you ever done that behavior in a meeting? Okay, yeah. Kill those meetings. So your team is saying, I don't want to be here. I want to do other stuff. So what we do is we specifically work on systems that keep engagement high. The next step we go to after show and tell with our customers into planning. And at this point, it starts to get kind of strange at Menlo because we plan with paper. We plan with little folded pieces of paper. And the pieces, I've got some examples here, are folded right to the size of the estimate for the task so that a 16-hour story card is actually physically twice as big as an 8-hour card. So here's a 16-hour card. Here's an 8-hour card. Are you seeing the spatial relationship between these? In case you're not, here's what a 4-hour card looks like. All right? And then you lay them out against a budget, which is represented by this empty box on this planning sheet. And as you lay the cards down on the planning sheet, you are consuming time, 1 week in our world, humans, 2 people, because we work in pairs, and budget, whatever the billing rate is for those number of hours. So this sheet right here, this simple sheet, captures the 3 fundamental characteristics of professional project management. And our client works through this plan by picking up these folded sheets of paper and laying them down on the planning sheet. It's a highly collaborative exercise. Now, at this point, I will tell you, you are probably thinking this yourself. The people who come and visit, they're like, my gosh, you guys are like the Amish of software development. They're like, why don't you use software for this? And our answer is simple. We choose tools we believe work better for humans, and when humans are in the same room together, given that we're visual, tactile creatures, we use visual, tactile tools. I mean, it's interesting. If I just take this piece of paper and go like this, I'm lighting up so many neurons in your brain right now. And what's really weird is you even know what this piece of paper tastes like. Don't you? You do, don't you? You know exactly what this tastes like. We have no idea why we need to know what things taste like, but I'm just telling you, we're weird that way, we humans. Our customers get very invested in this process because the tool isn't getting in the way. We don't have to have an emissary go work the project management software. It's pretty simple. Pick the card up, put it down on the planning sheet. If it fits, great. If it doesn't, you're going to have to pull off something of equal or greater size, move it off to the side, and replace it with something else. Makes that whole trade-off thing very obvious. Now, for those of you who might be in a meeting tomorrow, if you want to be really annoying, and the boss at the end of the meeting, if you've ever heard this, or whoever's running the meeting says, so we're all on the same page, right? You ever heard that phrase, we're all on the same page? Just raise your hand and say, hey, okay, boss, I'm okay being on the same page. Which page are we talking about? The whiteboard, the flip chart, the notebook, the email that comes out. I'm okay being on the same page. You just got to tell me which page. Now, you ask those kind of questions too often, you won't be with the organization very long, but you can at least have fun for a little while. But when we say at Menlo we're all on the same page, we are literally all on the same page. So simple, repeatable, measurable, visible tools that feed human energy, build human relationships. All supported by simple, handwritten artifacts. Why do we like handwritten? For one simple reason, it is impossible to not read something you wrote by hand. Whereas an electronic document, you can cut and paste, drag and drop, throw stuff in, and nobody actually reads the document, not even the person who originated it. When those plans are laid out, we put them up on a wallboard display for all to see. Each swim lane represents a pair of people assigned to work together. The color-coded sticky dots tell the story about where we're at in this particular story card. Yellow says that's what we're working on right now. Orange says we think we're done. One of my famous lines, and I used most of these particular phrases when I was spending about 20 years of my career actually writing code, is developers have as many different definitions for done as Eskimos have words for snow. You've probably said many of them. How many of you have ever been a developer? Somewhere, okay, yeah, good portion of you. You know, we'll say things like, well, it's done, but it's not done. Well, it's ready, but it's not complete. Well, it's complete, but it's not finished. Well, it's finished, but it's not deployable. Well, it's deployable, but it's not installable. Well, it's installable, but it's not deliverable, right? Our coders, our programmers, can only self-declare they think they're done. And they put an orange dot on the card, and then QA comes around, checks their work, and QA likes what they see, green dot. It's an endorphin rush for the programmers. If QA doesn't like what they see, red dot. That's an endorphin rush for the QA team. Are there any QA people in the room? Anybody ever was in QA? Anybody like that? Oh, excellent. Great. So I'm going to give you a line, right? So work with me here a little bit. So you go, something gets done, you go test it, and it doesn't work right. Has that ever happened? And you go back to the programming team, and you're like, hey guys, just want to let you know I was testing this thing, and it didn't do what it was supposed to do. What is the most likely response you will get from them? Yeah, that's amazing how it worked on my machine. Awesome. As soon as they say that to you, grab their computer and ship it to the customer. They will never say that again, okay? That's my QA takeaway for you. See, she's enjoying that. At least one person in this crowd got something takeaway to take home with them. The final conversation we had to improve was the conversation with the lost tribe of technology. Now, you know what lost tribes are, right? The anthropologists are hacking their way through the Amazonian forest, and they come across this indigenous people who has never had contact with the outside world before. In the software world, we call them users. Actually, we call them stupid users. And then we write dummies books for those poor people. Right? I mean, seriously, what other industry could get away with calling the people they serve stupid for their entire history? And get away with, we're expanding now. We can't hire enough programmers, and we call the people we serve stupid users. Like, seriously, come on. Right? Now, just to drive this point home, because I know I have enough technologists in the room, they're like, what are you talking about, Rich? We make amazing to understand technology. Then tell me why I can't record another run on my GPS smartwatch. Just tell me. What, it says full. Yeah, okay, whatever, delete. I mean, clear it, empty it, do something, but let me do another run. No, it's full. There is no answer to this. There's no button to push to clear it out. I guess I have to go buy another one. You can run so many runs. But maybe that's part of the marketing plan here at Nike. But here's my favorite hunting target. If I can just put you in the right mode, you will look at the world differently from this point forward. This is a red pill, blue pill moment, like in The Matrix. How many of you ever saw the movie The Matrix, right? Yeah, so I appreciate this crowd. My wife's like, really? Do you think people you talk to watch The Matrix? I'm like, are you kidding? My people? They all watch The Matrix, right? You know, Morpheus says, take the red pill and I'll show you the truth. I won't change anything. I'll just reveal the truth. Take the blue pill, you'll forget you're over here. This is the red pill of technology. And I use a lot of different examples, but my favorite target now is one we all experience. The chip reading credit card machines. Right? Yeah. They've actually turned credit card transactions into pain. They've made it painful to buy something with a credit card now, haven't they? Because you go up and, you got your card. It's something you've been doing, from some of us for like 30 or 40 years now. And you like, oh, sorry, sir, you can't. Oh, okay, what am I, you got to insert. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, sir, you didn't put it in far enough. No, you actually have to pull it out and put it back in again. Okay. And then the screen comes up. What does the first screen say? Do not remove card, right? And then the screen blinks. Right? That screen goes away, and the next screen comes up in a different font, different color, everything. And what does that screen say? Do not remove card. So you're like, okay. And then, of course, at that point, it stays in the same font, doesn't put anything out, and then it says, please remove card. And, of course, now at this point, you're like, I'm not touching that thing. And just to remind you, you're a stupid user, what does it do? It beeps at you. You all know this, right? I can actually now, at those same machines, take out my phone and with one simple button push, just lay my finger on top of the phone, I eliminate all that pain, and I disintermediate the credit card companies. Oh yeah, I had to put my credit card information in my iPhone in order for this to work, but that's temporary. Apple's going to become a credit card company pretty soon, and then all credit card companies will be like, what happened? And I actually have had on tour some of the credit card companies come to Menlo. I'm like, you guys realize your product is now painful to use because of these machines. And they're like, well, we didn't design those machines. That's not our product. Whatever. And all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, right? There are so many examples of these kind of stupid things. And so what we had to do to get past this was add an entirely new practice to Menlo. We call it high-tech anthropology. And the idea is go watch people do their work. Empathize with them, understand their lives, their goals as human beings, understand their vocabulary. I can guarantee you there is no way the fine folks at Verifone ever watched somebody do a credit card transaction before they sent those machines out to the world. There's either that or they're just plain old cruel. Right? You know, my favorite one is there's a Starbucks near us that's got one of these, and the last thing it does is it says, please, or remove card, please wait. That's the last screen. Beep, 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 beep. Like, okay, I'm pulling you out. I don't know what the please wait was for. The point is, this idea of understanding the humans we serve, back to my bookshelf story, is the heart of what we want to do. We want to delight people with the work we do. All of us, not just us at Menlo, all of us. We want people to love what it is we do. We don't want them to tell funny stories about the work that we did, because some humans actually worked on these products. And they foisted on them, and now you did that? That was your work? No, not me. It was, I worked for the company that does that, but I wasn't on that project. Oh, thank goodness, because, you know, and everybody's like now apologetic for work they do. We use a lot of paper-based tools here as well. We use personas, and we invented this thing called a persona map, which prioritizes one persona versus another to make sure we understand exactly who it is we're serving, because if you try and build a product that works for all people, it ends up working for no one. Our anthropologists are sense makers. They're also 3M's favorite customer for Post-it note sales. But they're the ones who gather the icky human squishy stuff, the stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense, bring it back to the office, understand the users, start to sort it through, and then create the user experience designs that our software team then turns into solid working software. And here's my message for you, not just for my talk, but for everything you heard today. Because I know the challenge that you face right now. At this minute, 10 minutes to 5, before we go to drinks and all that sort of thing, is there something that happened today that excited you? There's some message you heard from me or one of the other keynotes or one of your side sessions, and you are armed to go back to the office tomorrow with a new idea that you want to try. How many of you are thinking maybe you got one of those? That you got something today that you want to take back tomorrow and start applying. And the first person you run up to that wasn't at the conference, you're like, hey, I was at AgileCamp yesterday, and great idea. And the person on the other side of the equation looks at you and goes, well, that won't work here. That's against policy. Oh, we'll never get approval for that. Really, right? And right there, right then and there, the idea dies, doesn't it? And I want to arm you with one simple response in that moment, and it is simply this. Look them in the eye, shrug your shoulders, say, yeah, I know, but let's run the experiment. Let's try something before we defeat it. Let's not assume it's not going to, well, we've tried that before. I don't care. Let's try it again. Maybe it'll be something new. Maybe we'll have a different result. But let's run the experiment. Now I'm going to tell you a story. In addition to CEO, my business card says chief storyteller. I would probably disappoint if I don't deliver you one good story. And this is a story about babies. There's also a little bit of story about dogs in here, but let's focus on the babies just for now. Now, if all you remember is a baby story, I will have missed the mark. The story I want you to remember is run the experiment. But let me show you how this worked in our world. 10 years ago, Tracy had little Maggie. And she was off for a few months of maternity leave. We had a new project starting up Tracy wanted to be a part of. She came up to me one day and she said, Rich, I'm ready to come back to work. I said, awesome, when can you be here? She says, soon. The problem is the daycare we plan to put Maggie in is full. Grandparents live too far away to help. My husband and I don't know what to do. I'm not sure when I can come back. Now in that moment, what Tracy never heard was a screaming match in my head. She never heard it. You know the kind I'm talking about, the bright voice and the dark voice? The dark voice said, don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will kill you. The lawyers will freak. The insurance policies will go through the roof. The bright voice said, you're an entrepreneur. You can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department. So I looked at Tracy and I said, bring her in. If I only had a camera in that moment of bewildering look on her face. She says, what do you mean? I said, bring her into work. She said, all day? I said, sure. She said, every day? I'm like, why not? She looked around the big open room that is Menlo. She says, Rich, where will I put her? I said, Tracy, she's 3 months old. She's not going anywhere. Just put her in a bassinet on the floor, wherever you're working. And she says, but what if she makes a fuss? I said, here it's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it. She said, oh, come on. You've raised 3 girls. You know big baby fuss. It'll destroy the ambiance of the whole room. I said, Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. You'll do the right thing. We'll work it out together. Let's run the experiment. Now, isn't she adorable? Funny thing is, that's not little Maggie. That's Ellie. Ellie's Menlo baby number 8. Josh on our team just had Menlo baby number 19 with his wife 2 days ago, in the last 10 years. This has been a delightful experiment at Menlo. It has been an amazing effect on our team. Now, I can assure you, when you run experiments, expect the unexpected, especially if it involves little humans. Okay? For example, Ellie learned to pair program. Ellie went to design meetings. Did Maggie fuss in those first few months? Of course she did. She was a baby. What we didn't expect was the team's response. That was what Tracy was worried about. And what happened? The team was like, no, it's my turn to hold the baby. These babies are raised by the village at this point. It is awesome. And then we found out something even better. This is Henry coming back to visit. That's actually Tracy there. We found out that our customers behave better when you bring a baby to the meeting. They don't yell at you, they don't swear at you, they don't get upset with you. Like, this is part of the marketing team of Menlo. It's awesome. Joy. I told the parents, I said, if there's a chance you could see a first because you brought your baby to work, whatever it was, the first sound, the first rolling over, the first whatever, and you have a chance to see that at work, awesome. Let's give you that opportunity. This has been a delightful addition to our culture based on one simple phrase, because I can guarantee you, Tracy was doing it with me. She thought it wouldn't work. And I said, let's run the experiment. And it's been a delightful experiment. Not all experiments work. That's okay. This is the other interesting opportunity you have in your teams, in your organizations, particularly inside of a large organization. And that's this. We've always allowed dogs into Menlo. We've actually got lease language that says we can have up to 3 dogs in our building at one time. Who puts that in a lease? Menlo does. But Michael, the gentleman in the orange shirt, was coming in for show and tell that day. He was going to meet with Megan and Laura, 2 of our high-tech anthropologists, to see the progress on his project. And he calls me up and he says, hey, Rich, do you mind if I bring Buster to show and tell? I said, sure, you can bring whoever you want. Who's Buster? He says, my Great Dane. I'm like, okay, this ought to be interesting. Buster came in the front door. Buster is a very friendly dog, and he put his paws here. I'm 6'5". His head was here. A little unnerving, but Buster is very friendly. And what I realized in this story was what Michael was choosing to do was join our team, join our culture, behave like us when he's interacting with us. Michael couldn't bring Buster into where he worked. It actually wouldn't be appropriate. So it wasn't anything wrong with his employer, oh my gosh, you don't like dogs or something. No, it wouldn't have been appropriate for Michael given the work they do. But when he was working with us, he wanted to be more like us. And this is the opportunity you have in your teams, is to create the kind of culture that's so inviting that the people you interact with on the other side of the equation want to be more like you. And that becomes a powerful agent of transformational change within your company. So think about the power you hold if you go back tomorrow and start running experiments based on creating an intentional culture focused on serving others. There is no question in our industry, no matter what we do, we have to approach this with rigor and discipline, but it does not mean we have to boil the fun, the happiness, and the joy out of our organizations while doing it. We have to continuously improve what we do, there's no question, and we have to build that learning organization that Peter Senge talks about in the 5th discipline, because it is, in fact, the only competitive advantage we have. So when you go back to work tomorrow, think about the experiments you want to start running inside your organization. Thank you very much.